Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, where three old heads put their old heads together to vibe on some of the most memorable or forgettable hip hop themed movies of all time. And here's HHMC with your HHMCs Boogie, JB, and DynoWright.
Bring it, come on.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1, Beat Street.
Beat Street, released in 1984, is a quintessential 80s East Coast hip-hop film. It contains all the elements of early hip-hop culture. The music, the breakdancing, the artwork in the form of graffiti, the entire b-boy lifestyle was introduced there. The movie itself features a young man, Kenny, and his younger brother, Lee, and their friends, Ramon and Charlie, as they hope to make a name for themselves in the South Bronx of New York during the infancy of hip-hop as we know it today. Wrought with beatboxes, spray paint cans, house parties, the club scene, breakdancing, and legendary cameo hip-hop artist appearances, Beat Street's like a stepping into a museum of early East Coast hip-hop culture. It should be required watching for people of all ages that consider themselves fans of the hip-hop genre. It's a definition of the b-boy era and a coming-of-age story about the young crew. Keep in mind this is 1984, and this is an instant classic. So what did we like about this film? Want to kick us off, Boogie?
Okay, so this is one of my favorite movies growing up. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched this movie. I love that it incorporated the four elements of hip-hop, and it came across as really authentic. Start off with the main character, Kenny. He was a DJ, and he also dubbed as one of the early versions of an MC hyping up the crowd. There were also other DJs featured throughout the film. You also had various stages of the MC, including those who ran at the local clubs and also to the well-established Roxy nightclub. And then you had your local girl group that performed at the house parties. The breaking was top-notch. You know what? The Magnificent Force, the New York City Breakers, and the Rocksteady crew all made cameos in this film, all classics. And then you have Ramon, who was just a local graffiti artist, but he put his burners on the subway cars and walls, and even the jealousy element. You have the guy Spit, who came across and defaced the property. So you have all four elements of hip hop. You had your MC, your DJ, your MC. You had your break dancers, your b-boys, and you also had your graffiti artists. That was one of the main things I liked about it.
Nice, Boogie. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it had everything that you'd want to see, and that was a lifestyle back then. That's what kids would do. And like I said, I like that it's like a coming of age story. You know, these young guys, they're trying to make a name for themselves. It's not a glamorous life. It's tough. It's tough out there on the streets. But you see, Ramon, who had fathered a child with his girlfriend, and he's learning the ways of the world. And in terms of, he's finally getting to the point where he's becoming a man and trying to be responsible. And he ends up getting a job and not only just doing his artwork, but he becomes a man. And unfortunately, tragedy hits towards the end, and they lose him. But you see that community all come together and support. It's a brotherhood. It's a whole family, and that whole culture was all about that. So I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too, and having never seen it before, which is crazy because it's a classic and I missed out on it, but it was really cool to see all these early hip-hop legends. It was a lot of famous rappers I've listened to for a long time but never really seen on screen and all of that. I did have to watch the credits again to see who was who because there were so many of them, but it was really fun to see. And we can talk about this later, but we see Kool Moe Dee without his sunglasses. Like, I didn't recognize him without it. I didn't recognize him without his sunglasses. So there was a lot of fun stuff I really liked in this movie. Early hip hop, who's who, at least the rappers.
Yeah, for sure. So Boogie, you can expand upon this a little bit more. There's Dougie Fresh, he is the best beatboxer ever. He was there. And then the Treacherous Three is where Kool Moe Dee got his start. So you want to go through who those artists were?
Yeah, I can give a quick rundown on some of the cameos. You got Africa Bambaataa, the Soul Sonic Force. You had the DJ Jazzy J. You had Us Girls, who consisted of Lisa Lee, Debbie D, and Sha Rock. Sha Rock, originally from the Funky 4+1, original mother of hip hop. Kool Herc, one of the fathers of hip hop. If you don't know who Kool Herc is, Google is your friend. The Treacherous Three, Kool Moe Dee, Special K, and LA Sunshine. Of course, we mentioned Dougie Fresh. You had Grandmaster Melly Mel in the Furious Five, Grandmaster Flash, and then you have Brenda K. Starr, Wanda D, and the System. If you don't know who the System are, look them up as well. Google is also your friend. Theme song to Coming to America, Don't Disturb This Groove. They put some nice classics out. Yes.
Yeah, Don't Disturb This Groove is one of the best songs ever.
Yeah, from the opening riff, that guitar, yeah.
Yeah, I mean DJ Kool Herc, he was featured prominently in the Netflix show Hip Hop Evolution, and he's pretty much brought the sound systems and the house parties. He was hustling before anybody else in bringing hip hop to the masses in New York, and people call him sometimes the Godfather of hip hop. You know, you may not know his name as much as you know some of the original hip hop groups, you know, like the Sugar Hill Gang and Run DMC, but DJ Kool Herc deserves just as much credit. That was awesome that he played a role in there at the Burning Spear nightclub where Kenny really got his big break in front of the talent agent. The music was great. I love also that the music is not just, you know, about the beats and scratches, but there's a lot of strength and power, political commentary in the lyrics. I like at the very end, it's very uplifting. I think it's Grant, was it Grandmaster Melly Mel? You know, we're talking about, yeah, talking about, you know, they talk about Iwo Jima, they talk about Vietnam, they talk about all these wars, right? And then they talk about egomaniacs controlling the self-righteous, learning from the past, working for the future. And then they're inspiring the children in the audience, the young folks, saying, listen, you're the future. So grab it by the horns.
There was a reference to being a slave to a computer, which is funny because it's in 1984.
Just took the words out of my mouth. Don't be a slave
Yeah.
to your computer. Yep.
And now look at us doing this on computers. Everyone has a computer in their pocket. If they only had known back then.
Yeah. It's 1984, right? That's when that epic ad came out from Apple based on Orson Welles' 1984, right? And
Yeah.
saying, you know, so the future was, you know, they were foretelling the future there for sure.
People should remember 1984 isn't that far from the end of the Vietnam War. So something on people's minds back then. Melly Mel's still talking about it. It was a relevant thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you know, there were incidents within the movie that super poignant today. If you see what's happening where Lee gets you know, arrested as long with some other folks with just really dance fighting, right? And it was literally like a racial profiling of these folks, and they just get locked up. His mother has to come bail him out. They were doing no harm to anybody, and you know this obviously still happens today. It's revealed that by Kenny and Lee's mother at the breakfast scene, I believe, and also later on when Kenny is courting Tracy, that he lost an older brother, Franklin, when he got caught up in the gang scene, and the cops came in, and his words, you know, folks got wasted, and my brother was one of those. So very relevant to today.
Yeah, there were a lot of little Easter eggs planted throughout the movie too. There was another scene that always sticks out with me, and every time I hear it, it kind of resonates with me because I know some of the history of what was going on in the Bronx at the time. One of them was, as you mentioned, with the scene with Franklin being wasted with the gang violence, and there was another one when they first were having a house party, and Henry was downstairs banging on the pipes, and they went downstairs to see where the noise was coming from, and he was telling them that he was looking for his friend that he served in the military with, and they were saying, you know, there was a fire, and you know, the immediate response was he was in a fire. It's like, no, the building was on fire. The landlord set the building on fire 5 times, and you know that was very prevalent in that time frame. And there was always the phrase the Bronx is burning. The landlords were setting their buildings on fire to commit basically insurance fraud. They were getting payouts and they were skipping out, and you had all of these abandoned buildings. Some of them were still standing, some of them were in ruin, but you get this layout as if there's a war torn country in the middle of New York, in the Bronx, because these buildings were getting burned down so these landlords could collect money. And that's the little small Easter egg that they planted in there. But every time I hear it, it always resonates with me. Because it took a long time for the Bronx to recover. And I mean, even Brooklyn, same thing.
Yeah, way to drop the knowledge there, Boogie. That's good knowledge.
Shout out to BX.
I was wondering, we try to analyze these movies, and like I said, a lot of stuff is still on point and relevant. But I do have to mention there was one scene that was, I guess, a little bit cringeworthy with a homophobic aspect of it, with the Santa Claus scene where they did a rap. It was hilarious in terms of the concept, in terms of Jingle Jangle for the poor. They're talking about Santa not coming through and give them a GI Joe toy. But if they had to redo it, I'm sure they would have reworded it. There was a part where he inferred that the GI Joe figure was gay, and then it was inferred that his sexuality was questioned, things like that. But remember, it was back. Not that it's ever acceptable. Back then, it was a lot more commonplace. But obviously, if they had to do it again, they would remove that scene overall.
1984 is close to the beginning of the AIDS crisis, which affected a lot of gay men. Not that it was an excuse to have those comments in there, but a lot of people weren't aware of gay culture, and so that's what it was like back then. There was a lot of this homophobic stuff going around.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stereotypes.
Yep.
A lot of stigmas.
Right.
But overall, if you go back to the Santa, it was funny. They're calling him a drunk. They're cursing. They're dropping the F-bomb at him. I was like, that's pretty funny. And well before the Bad Santa movies with Billy Bob Thornton and stuff like that. So kind of cutting edge in terms of the concept. No one badmouths Santa.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes though, because just out of the pure concept of them, taking shots at Santa Claus for not getting what they wanted. Like so much so that I actually have a T-shirt with that scene on the front of it.
All right.
That's right.
I forgot to put it on today, but yeah, I'll pass it around one time for one of the other episodes so you can get a glimpse at it.
You should send us a picture of that. Put it in our Instagram stories.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yes, I mean there were some humorous things throughout the film, which which made me crack a smile. Obviously, the fashion back then, we always laugh at now. What we were wearing in the 80s, right? We laugh at our old pictures back in the 80s, but the fashions that us girls were wearing and some of the other folks. However, this set the stage for kids are still wearing these. There's Kango hats. There was, sideways caps, the loose fitting pants, parachute pants, and things like that. And, Puma sneakers and whatnot. Also thought some of the dialogue was just really funny to break things up. There was a scene with Kenny was jawing with Ramon, and then Charlie. Actually, I think it was Charlie that was jawing with Ramon, and Kenny breaks it up by pretending to be a newscaster and just rapping his way through it, right, providing humor. And that was good. And I like Kenny and Lee's mother rapping at the breakfast table a little bit too. Just telling him, eat your eggs before I break your legs. So little things like that were cracking me up.
Yeah, the one who played his mother, Mary Alice, she's a gem. She's played a mother in a bunch of movies that I've seen, and it's always good to see her on screen. She's always brings a little bit of wit to her role.
Yeah, that's great. So why don't we get into a little bit of that as well? Is some of these actors and actresses, right? You may have recognized them from other things, or maybe you didn't know about them. But Guy Davis, who plays Kenny, was the son of activists, writers, prominent figures in African American culture, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. I mean, that's just remarkable there.
Yeah.
He's an accomplished blues guitar player, which I should have known being a guitar player, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
He's an actual musician in the movie and in real life.
Yeah. My mom told me that she actually came across him on something, might have been Facebook, and I think she used to communicate with him on there as well. Yeah. She was
That's
the one that
awesome.
told me that he's an actual musician.
Yeah, and as Boogie mentioned, the breakdancing crews were famous crews that had that battle at the Roxy, New York City Breakers and the Rocksteady crew, and that was an epic scene, the Roxy for sure. There were a few different dance scenes that you got to check them out. Even if you just pull up the clip on YouTube, put in Beach Street breakdancing at the Roxy, that it's well worth your time.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most iconic breakdancing battles ever caught on film in a movie. Just
Yeah.
amazing footwork. Of course, it had to be the battle ended with the iconic crazy legs, removing his sneakers and going into a crab walk. That was amazing.
That was like the mic drop moment right there. Exactly.
Basically, yeah, that was the mic drop right there.
But also, co-produced. The movie was co-produced by Harry Belafonte, which we were talking about, and we didn't realize that, or maybe we had forgotten it into the recesses of our mind. But the legendary Harry Belafonte, he put this on film, and he wanted to portray. He was from that area, the South Bronx, and he wanted to just say this is the culture and put it out there on film and help to inspire a lot of folks.
Yeah, it was directed by Stan Lathan. Coincidentally, a few hours ago, I was upstairs watching a comedy special, and who, of course, produced it was Stan Lathan. He produced all of these iconic comedy shows, Def Comedy Jams. This one I happened to be watching was Earthquake. He does Chappelle and Chris Rock. All these iconic performances. He's been a producer for those, and also father of Sanaa Lathan.
Yeah, well, Dave Chappelle's Real Husbands of Hollywood. I saw you look up his
Yeah,
history. He's done a lot of great work.
he's an impressive track record. Yeah,
And father of Sanaa, right?
yeah. Yep. Future father-in-law. Now let me stop.
Actress Sanaa Lathan, who's quite the looker, and
Yeah,
yeah, she's quite accomplished herself. Um,
absolutely.
Another fun fact: the role of Robert, who was Tracy's boss at I'm going to call it the Community Center for the Arts, right? Who was played by Dwayne Jones, who was Ben, prominent figure in Night of the Living Dead. That was an interesting fact that I discovered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course we got
Um,
Tracy.
yeah, yeah. You want to talk about Tracy?
Yeah, Tracy Ray, who's played by Rae Dawn Chong, who is the daughter of the iconic comedian and partner of Cheech and Chong, Mr. Tommy Chong. Like she's been in a bunch of movies as well, in the '80s and some good roles. So yeah, it's always good to see her on screen. This is probably one of her earlier roles, but she had a very important role in it as well because she was one of the people who kind of brought hope to the crew. They were all looking to make their way, and just by pure coincidence and being in the right place at the right time and crossing paths with Lee, um, she it started off a little bumpy, but she actually ended up providing some hope and gave Kenny some assistance in making his vision on how to memorialize and commemorate the life of Ramon helped him bring that to fruition. So she played a very important role in the movie from my perspective.
Yeah, for sure. They realized they have a lot in common because she was a composer,
Yeah,
she was a choreographer, and she was looking at the musical aspect of it well. And they were able to collaborate because Kenny was DJ as well. Um, Towards the end, when Melly Mel does the iconic Beat Street song and the tribute to Ramon, and following that, you see a minister come out on the stage and telling the kids to believe it, right? And that minister is played by Bernard Fowler, who, if you don't know, has a long history with the Rolling Stones as a backup singer. He's quite accomplished as well. So, very star-studded cast overall. And another musical tidbit for the younger generation: Biggie's Notorious B.I.G. had a song called "Suicidal Thoughts," and he actually has a line in his song that references Beat Street. It says, should I die on the train tracks like Ramo and Beat Street? People at the funeral fronting like they miss me. So there's been a couple other songs that reference Beat Street, and it holds up to this day.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I also wanted to ask you guys, Boogie and DynoWright, do you think this movie could be made again today? If so, how?
I, I I think that it could, because I think in this day right now there's a big. I mean, there's a lot of a thirst for retro programs and the retro look, and just everybody wants to retro everything. And even when you look at some of the shows and the movies that are coming out now, they're all like remakes or revisiting, old iconic shows and movies that we grew up on, things like
Yeah.
that. There was a show that was on Netflix. Unfortunately, it was canceled. It was called The Get Down. If you ever get a chance to check that out, if you haven't, that's a great show. It actually it's fiction, but it takes place in the Bronx as well, and it kind of starts off with the beginning of how hip hop started with these actual the parties, and they actually references Cool Herc and a couple of other guys, prominent figures from that time, throwing these parties and who's going to go to these parties. And it also talks about the night that the great blackout of New York, where there was a lot of looting and everyone became DJs because they were able to get their hands on some good equipment. But
Yeah, I remember seeing a story about that. Yeah.
yeah, but that show, it was so great. It was such a great show, and I think because of that show becoming so iconic and having such a strong following, that, I mean, if you were to even imagine, mention putting Beat Street out there, I think that the world will gobble it up. I mean, you don't even have to call it Beat Street; you can call it something else, but it would have the same premise. But yeah, I think it would hold up.
I totally agree. And in fact, I know how it could work. If we pitch this or someone pitches this to Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? Because I love the confluence of the cultures. You have Ramon, who's Puerto Rican descent. You have the young African American kids, and you see even some Spanish songs, right? I know Lin-Manuel Miranda was influenced by old school hip hop. You see it obviously throughout Hamilton, which is all hip hop, which was just a brilliant idea, and just to this day is just super successful, made a ton of money, and got a lot of more people into hip hop and American history. B Street is all about a huge part of American history with the B boy era in the early hip hop. And so, like, I think it could be done just like this. And I think people would love it. He could just enhance upon some of the songs, and it'd be great. I mean, if you think about it, Steven Spielberg just remade West Side Story,
Right?
which, if I'm not mistaken, set like in the 50s. And he didn't modernize it, which I love. It was not like, we're going to do a different twist on it and stuff like that. He had it like exactly. So we can preserve this and just add it. What if we put it into like 4K, and have these personalities and have cameos from these same legends that made their appearances? That would be incredible.
Yeah, I think it will work.
Yeah, I think it
Let's
could.
get Steven on the phone.
Exactly.
I think the movie could be remade. I think you could remake this movie, but I don't think you could make this movie as a new film today. The culture's not new anymore. It's like 40 plus years old now. This movie was like a clarion call, like, here's this new culture and here's this new thing that people don't know about, and it's going to become bigger and bigger. So for that reason, I think I don't know what's going on underground right now that would become as big as hip hop and could make a movie similar to Beat Street on that.
Right.
Newer filmmaking techniques, maybe not modernizing it like Spielberg did with West Side Story. This is like 16 years before like Bullet Time and The Matrix. It'd be interesting to see how they would remake this film with modern filmmaking techniques. I'm not sure how you would make a film as a brand new statement about an emerging culture right now.
Right.
You could say that hip hop is the last great big American cultural export of this scale since jazz.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny you mentioned export because I was reading how this film specifically had a big influence on German culture, the youth in Germany as the Berlin Wall, and the tensions between East and West Germany. And this is something that really united the youth and gave them something to embrace back then. So that really brought hip hop over into dancing, break dancing, and to that part of Europe for sure. So yeah, I'm glad you used that term export there. So Boogie is a DJ of our crew here. Literally, he has a DJ business doing it for years. Did you own the soundtrack for Beat Street? And if not, would you buy it?
I absolutely owned it, and I was trying to look. I don't have it in my stack over there. It's actually sitting in my mom at my mom's house. I have a collection that I keep at my mom's house. But if you look at the picture, oops, get it there. Oops, that's not it. Where is it at? I just had it. Where is it at? I just had it. There we go.
Levi showing it to us on his phone.
Yep.
Ah, he's got the vinyl.
Yeah. He's
That's
got the
vinyl.
music.
That's volume one
You have volume 2 too?
and volume two.
Wow. I read that this was the first movie that had a 2-volume soundtrack.
Oh, it probably was because I know a lot of my other soundtracks. It was just like one record, or it might have a double album, but it would all be in one sleeve.
Right.
Yeah, I had just two separate sleeves. I've owned those albums since the movie came out, and they still play. Maybe a little bump in the road here and there, but they're still pretty good condition. So, yeah, by all means, like that soundtrack.
We'll put that on our Instagram stories.
Yeah, I love the nostalgia. Was there anything that you guys didn't like or felt was lacking in the film?
Yeah, you know what? There was a little hokiness in it occasionally, but I think that's just as I watch it as an adult. I mean, as a child, it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't see much humor in it. It was more so, this movie is great. Oh my God, my mind is blown. Mid 40s now, I watch it now, and of course, I can see some of the funny stuff in it that wasn't intentional. But if you watch any '80s film in your mid 40s, you're going to find some things in it that are humorous, even though they weren't meant to be. So, but that's probably about it. Yeah, that's probably about it with me. But even those little nuances aren't enough to distract away from the classic status that I have with Beat Street.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I mentioned before is, the unfortunate, the homophobic
Oh yeah, and that.
slur, which I know is important. And but again, we've progressed so much as a culture. We're so, as a whole, we're open minded. Obviously, there's very large pockets of folks that are not open minded, right, and not embracing all walks of life, all sexual orientations, and etc. But that one, obviously, they need a mulligan for that one. I really enjoyed it so much that the only thing that I thought was lacking was that I wish there was like an epilogue or where are they now? Because while there was two parts to the soundtrack, there was not a sequel to Beach Street, right? So I would love to know, did Kenny and Tracy's romance flourish? Did they eventually get married? Did they open up a school and studio to aspire young dancers and hip hop artists? That would be awesome. Did Lee go on to dance for like a Broadway show or something? Did he take his breakdancing act on the road?
Right.
Charlie, promoting everybody, et cetera, like that. I'd love to see a follow up on that.
Yeah, like the Charlie eventually owned the Roxy nightclub.
Right. He had a lot of he had moxie to walk into that Roxy like that, and just kind of lay it down like, I'm in charge here. Yeah. He was convincing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I didn't like about the movie, aside from the homophobia, was there was some character development that, and I'm not a professional film critic, so listeners hit us up. But we mentioned Spit, who was the rival graffiti artist that would deface other people's burners and murals and those things. He plays a pivotal role in the movie, but we don't really know about him. We don't really find out much about him. Maybe he was just supposed to be part of the environment that they're supposed to deal with. He's based on a real person. If we go through Style Wars, that documentary about graffiti, you see he's based on a character in that film. But if you haven't watched Style Wars, then you wouldn't know this. So I felt like I needed more meaning behind Ramon dying because he was fighting with Spit in the subway. And for that matter, Robert, Tracy's boss, I was confused by the relationship. I think I see them kissing in one scene where she kissed him and it made Kenny jealous. So I felt like something that it wasn't developed much, the sort of love triangle going on there. And so I was confused by it a little bit. Maybe the listeners, maybe you can explain it to me.
That's true. Yeah, I caught that relationship. I didn't know it was a hug or a kiss, but it was something that was kind of like maybe more accepted back in the day, where how 70s for sure, and maybe early 80s with secretaries. Yeah, I understand that lacked a little bit of storyline for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it was cut for time, but those two things I would have liked some more on those.
Yeah. I think Ramon he dropped a quick hint about Spit. They said he said something along the lines that he used to put work out and nobody really liked it. And so that from that point on, he just go around writing his name on other people's stuff. But yeah, it wasn't much. I think it was maybe like a couple of lines and that was it. So I do agree that we probably could have, given him a little more character development so we kind of get a little bit more about, what he was doing. But I've definitely seen instances of that happen in my own neighborhood, with people putting up, burners and people coming along and just writing their name across it. And yeah.
It's hard out here in the streets.
Yeah. So, guys, what do we think of overall rating? And I think what we'll do for the ratings for this podcast is we have two choices. Bring that funky flick back. Bring that funky flick back, or leave it in the vault. Leave it in the vault. So, Boogie, what would you say for this one?
Bring that funky flick back.
Yeah, DynoWright, what do you got?
Bring it back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Bring that funky flick back. Bring that funky flick back. So yeah, we all like this, and we think this, as I mentioned in the beginning, this should be required viewing. Hip Hop 101 for those that love the genre, for those that want to learn about it. There you have it.
We did it, guys. We did it.
Yep.
Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and DynoWright. Theme music by Boogie. Thanks to Liv and Rose from the Highs and Lows with Liv and Rose podcast. Go check them out and subscribe to their show. Special thanks to Susan Berger, Tawanda Edwards, and Allison Yares. Hit us up at hiphopmovieclub@gmail.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hip Hop Movie Club. You can also check us out at hiphopmovieclub.com. The next episode of Hip Hop Movie Club podcast drops in 2 weeks. Subscribe today in your favorite podcast app and you won't miss it. Please do share this with a friend. Shout out to you listeners. Don't hate, congratulate.